Before we get started, I just want to set your expectations. Just like me, Sergeant Ford cut out all the extra stuff that nobody cares about. So it should be a relatively short ceremony. Just the speeches, depending on how long the speeches go, that's how long the ceremony is going to go. So before we start, take it, raise your hand if you are family, Ford family, or just family. Okay. Raise your hand if you're friends. Open bar! Open bar! I don't even know where the guy is. Alright. So, ladies and gentlemen, take seats. We're going to proceed. Ceremony begins in 2 minutes. This time, respectfully request a sound from cell phones. Unless you're, of course, taking pictures or start the event, so just for you to have those on whatever you want. Welcome to the Turner ceremony honoring my twin brother, Robert Ford. We look exactly the same. We were born on the same day. Have you guys seen the movie Twins? That was about us. I know it's a surprise for his mom, but today, tribute on the case of his retirement following 20 years of active service to the Air Force. Congratulations, 20 years, I completely understand. So the ceremony you'll witness today is brief, but deeply rooted in military tradition. As a fellow Air Force member is retired, and men and women of the United States Air Force pause to pay special tribute to his long and accomplished career. So, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the national anthem and the invocation.
He had a career of intelligence, analysis, and decision support. His work involved providing leaders the United States. He developed young armed men and gave his knowledge with profession in a manner of ethics and high standards, caring for the well-being of the people under his charge. He was a teacher and instructor and shaped the lives of many others. We ask you, dear God, to bless him now as he enters into the retirement from the Air Force. Watch over him and his family. Keep him under your constant care and loving protection. But above all, we ask you to bless, protect the great country of the United States of America. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please be seated. At this time, we'd like to recognize a very special guest, beginning with Sergeant Ford's family, Jessica, children, Cadence, and Leilana. Bob, he wasn't feeling very good today, so he couldn't make it. His uncles, Tom and Brian. His aunts, Vicky and Angel. And Silas. Cadence and Leilana's godparents, Paul and Tiana. And Colonel Kent Sturgis, commander of the 33rd Cyberspace Operations Squadron. And the Chief Navigation Skipper. Sergeant Ford and Ford family would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this memorable occasion.
Side over this retirement for Master Sergeant Robert Ford from the United States Air Force after 20 distinguished years to our nation. But before we begin, that was just so awesome. Can I have one more round of applause for Kate? Like she just did. That's the courage. It was awesome. Okay. And special thanks to the Squadron Leadership Team. Thanks for being here, and to all my fellow intelligence and cyberspace professionals. Thank you so much for being here on this special occasion. And last but certainly not least, again, Bob's family, the Ford tribe that's been here as well to help us properly bookend this chapter of service as a family to our Air Force and to our nation. So Aunt Vicky and Uncle Tom came all the way from South Carolina. Aunt Angel and Byron, Brian came from Georgia. Of course, Kay all the way from outside of Savannah, and then of course Bob Sr., who's with us virtually, traveled a long way to be here. Bob's children, Cadence, Leilana, awesome that you get to be a part of this and hear all these stories about your dad. I've got some good ones. And last but certainly not least, Bob's better half, partner and best friend of 17 years, Jess Ford. So let's give these guys a Bob, thank you for entrusting me with this ceremony. It means a lot to me, and I hope that now, sitting up in front of this room, you realize that with all your friends and all the coworkers and your loved ones here together in one room, that the effort and the thought that you had to put into making the ceremony happen was worth it. The truth is, this is a huge deal, and it's an important milestone, and thank you for letting all of us celebrate you and your family on this occasion. You know, as I was preparing for this ceremony, I initially struggled with how do you best characterize or capture Bob's 20 years of dedicated service and adequately capture the sacrifices and the things that this family did across this career. And it's worth mentioning here, too, that this 20-year period was a period of near constant conflict across the globe, whether it was Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and things more recently. And this is a very tumultuous 20-year period for the United States military. But it became apparent very quickly that through the official record of the things that were in Bob's EPBs, and the testimony of so many witnesses that were there, many of you that are in the crowd today, this is actually a fairly easy story to tell. Along the way, I hope to share some quotes and maybe take the opportunity to roast you just a little bit. Yeah, give you a that. Okay. All right, so this Air Force story begins in the noteworthy year of 2006. A guy from Texas named George W. Bush was president. The New England Patriots defeated the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith came out in theaters. And a song called "We Belong Together" by Mariah Carey was the #1 hit on the radio. Oh wait, and gas was $1.87. The place you asked is Garden City, Georgia. A cosmopolitan oasis northwest of Savannah and coastal Georgia, right off of I-95 and I-66. Still not ringing a bell? Yeah, me either. Just over about 10,000 residents. Founded in 1939, Garden City is home to the largest port facility in Savannah. And according to the Chamber of Commerce, it is a, and I quote, progressive blend of industry and friendly neighborhood. Bob was living his best life near all the beaches at Tybee Island with his mom, dad, and sisters. And nearly from the start, Bob was a legend. Now, full transparency, Bob's family sent me many pages of stories of Bob as a kid that are pure gold. So dang funny. Unfortunately, because I don't want to keep you here for too long, I've listed my 3 favorites that I would like to share. And again, this is courtesy of Bob Sr.'s take. All right, so the first one we call the Great Escape. At the tender age of 3, Bobby decided he was philosophically opposed to going to preschool. After multiple jailbreaks orchestrated by his 12-year-old sister, he staged a solo escape. He was found walking alone down a busy street and calmly informing a passerby that Bobby, go home, Bobby's house. By the way, Bob's vocabulary hasn't improved that much. Before being discovered, he was rapidly playing with a rabbit while the entire preschool staff and the police searched frantically. As a result, his academic career was put on hold until kindergarten. The second one we'll call this the mysterious malady. In first grade, Bob self-diagnosed a rare disease contracted during his family's imaginary time in Africa. The primary symptom, an inability to ask permission before using the bathroom. This is possible foreshadowing for another story. His parents were baffled when the teacher gravely inquired about the son's condition at a parent-teacher conference, learning for the first time about their African travels and Bobby's very convenient and also very fake illness. The third one, we'll call this a first brush with the law. Bobby's life of crime started early. At 7, he had to stand up on his tiptoes and explain to a judge why the family dog was at large and pay its bail from the police station. He later graduated more serious offenses, teaming up with a friend to shoot orange paintballs at passing cars. Their brilliant criminal enterprise crumbled when a victim followed them home and reported the crime, leading the police to ask a simple question. Did their son have a paintball gun with paintballs? The case was closed. According to other reliable family sources, young Bob was also a legendary athlete in his own mind. As Uncle Tom tells it, Bobby fancies himself a superb athlete. His mouth and trash talk were legendary. He acquired this family trait honestly, whether it be through basketball, ping pong, backyard duel, or cornhole. This competitiveness overwhelms him, and he is unable to refrain from running his mouth. Bob, he learned from the best, and will always remain in second place in the family after discussions of his brother-in-laws, Brent and Stephen, who are decidedly distant in any ranking. After completing school at an all-boys Catholic school, Bob was struggling a bit to find his path and purpose in life. He struggled a bit in college, got into a smidge of trouble, and was hopping from job to job, as he puts it, like a frog on hot pavement. As Bob also puts it, he had reached a very clear crossroads in life, continuing to make impressively bad decisions, or try something, or it was time to try something radically different. He was close enough to the beach to feel like he should have been doing better than he was at the place. Bob began considering the military as a change of pace. To him, the Air Force didn't just offer a career, it offered a chance to grow up, straighten out, and maybe even become, as he put, someone future me wouldn't apologize for. Bob's parents strongly encouraged him to join the military, and in typical fashion, which caused him to immediately resist the sensible advice. Once he moved past that instinct, he realized that the military offered exactly what he felt like he was missing: a sense of accountability, purpose, and a chance to rebuild a life from the ground up. So Bob steps off the bus at Lackland Air Force Base into the Texas heat in spring of 2006 to begin his Air Force journey. Scrying all these slightly off, the MTIs responded by violently redistributing every single item that he owned across the dorm. Then he locked eyes with me without even glancing at my locker and calmly asked, "Do you know what happens now?" Before I could answer, he emptied my locker too. We both failed the inspection and were informed that it would be fixed after everyone else was inspected, or we would be removed from the Air Force. That day, the wingman concept stopped being a slogan and became a survival strategy. Now, Bob shared several other stories with me. I just got to tell you one of them because it's my favorite. This is the way I was a dorm guard at 0200, half asleep, doing routine security checks. I heard someone talking on a cell phone in the latrine. Without hesitation, I kicked the door open and barked, "What are you doing on your phone?" The man turned around. It was our MTI. He called and said, "I was trying to reach your mom, but your sister answered, so I guess we're fine." Then he added, "Why are you still standing here? Get the hell out of here." I exited at Olympic speed and avoided the latrine like it was cursed. Of course, Bob didn't quit. He persevered through these tough couple months and completed boot camp without incident. Then in summer of 2006, Bob was deployed to Goodfellow Air Force Base for 6 months in college training in San Angelo, Texas, where he would become an all-source analyst, or 1-0, as we know. Now, Bob entered the real Air Force, as we like to say, in the fall of 2006 at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, the very heart of America's strategic command. Here, a young airman first class corps was not given a gentle introduction to the Air Force. He was thrust into the high-stakes world of STRATCOM, Joint Functional Component Command for Global Strike and Integration. As an all-source analyst, his initial duties were of immense consequence, requiring him to perform intricate target systems analysis and author over 50 detailed intelligence summaries for our nation's most senior military officers. By 2009, now a senior airman, he was singled out for his keen analytical insight by the Defense Intelligence Agency Watch Chief and entrusted to perform duties as a senior watch officer, which is normally a responsibility reserved for a much more senior person than NCO. Bob learned a lot and grew immensely at that office. He likes to put it that he nearly ended his career with a, and I quote, bold and clearly reckless act of critical thinking. As a 21-year-old tasked with making target holders, he asked his supervisor, hey, why are we doing this if the Defense Intelligence Agency already was doing this? Which turns out was a fatal mistake. Okay, yeah. For this crowning of logic, he was immediately labeled as a troubled airman. Just as Bob was about to break up with the Air Force as a result of this experience, feeling that it was time that he should see other people, a mentor named Master Sergeant Alexander took a chance. This single act of faith turned everything around. Before Bob left, that Master Sergeant gave him 2 pieces of advice that will stick with him for the rest of his career. Learn from your bad supervisors and never base a career decision on your first assignment. Now, this all was very important things that were happening at this point in Bob's life, but perhaps the most consequential event that happened during his time at Offutt was when he started hanging out with Jess on a regular basis. When I asked Jess what struck her about Bob when they first met, she promptly responded, almost nothing. Firmly planted in the friend zone, everything changed for Bob in 2008. Turns out a massive blizzard had gone through Nebraska and ground it all in place, ruining Bob's Christmas travel plans to come back home. Jess, who was driving home with her dog, agreed when Bob offered to split the gas, drive with her, and the cost of hotel rooms. The 23-hour drive was a turning point. Jess recalled that after such a long time in the car, you moved past the cool songs on the 40-gig iPod, deep into the guilty pleasure music on the cake and other things like that. They sang, laughed, never ran out of things to talk about, and after dropping Bob off with his family in Savannah, Jess went on to see her own family. But the 2 spent the Christmas break messaging each other on MySpace. Bob invited her to return to Savannah the day early to stay with his family, where she had an absolute blast, even going bar hopping with them downtown. The drive back to Nebraska was, in Jess's words, even better. Even when she dropped Bob off at his dorm, she immediately felt that something was missing. The next morning, Bob invited her to breakfast and told her he wasn't interested in staying in the friend zone anymore. In response, Jeff wrote him 18 pages explaining why a relationship was a bad idea, why he should go find someone else. However, Bob's simple reply was that he didn't care. They officially started dating on January 11th, 2009. He came over to cook dinner for her, which in her words was terrible. And essentially, he never left. He abandoned his dorm for the last month and a half, adopted. So, again, I really debated whether or not to tell a story of wedding day. Okay? And the backstory with where Drainer came from and other things. Okay, so prepare yourself, it's going to be great. Right. So as many of you know, Bob's call sign, his nickname, if you will, is Drainer, which unfortunately stands for dumb, rude, cognitively challenged, and extremely mentally handicapped. will tell almost anyone that the reason that he was named for this was inspired by the fact that he partied all night one time, slept through his flight the next day, and nearly got into some really big trouble when he was at Nellis. But there's more to the story, and this is directly from the boss celebration. Bob doesn't embarrass easily, especially with the beer in his hand. He had no problems being in a hula skirt, coconut bra, and a neon wig. The only time I can think of that he was actually embarrassed was on our wedding day. Now, you might have seen pictures from the wedding on Facebook, but none of the actual service, and here's why. You've probably worked with Bob long enough to realize that he has the smallest bladder possible. Added beer pong and with a future wife and best man until 0200 the day of our wedding, it only makes matters worse. Bob and I had planned a very simple beach wedding, scheduled to start at 3 o'clock, 1500 for our celebration. Since I lost the let's just have our parents there battle, close to 100 people were gathered around Bob on the beach waiting for the bride. In actuality, his bride was up on the dock waiting for her father to finish frying a turkey so that he could give her away. After the father and the bride finally got there, we started walking towards the wedding party when the best man ran up and screaming, "Stop! Stop! Bob's got to pee!" We looked over just in time to see Bob hauling butt over the dunes. Apparently, the color in my face rained as I watched Bob run away until the best man's words finally registered. As soon as he came back down the beach, we proceeded with the service. As my father and I get closer to Bob, I can hear all of his nieces giggling and all the color draining from Bob's face. Just then I noticed a long, dark line on his head, and his crotch to below his knees, and heard someone say, "Uncle Bobby peed his pants." Yeah, according to us, you wouldn't even look me in the eye during the service. Just that mouthing, "I'm so sorry." Sorry, I'm not scared. I have to tell that story. Okay, so let's move on, right? Let's go to Shaw Air Force Base. And this is 2010, right? The wind shifted him to the east, carrying him from the strategic level, the global view of office, to the tactical, demanding world of fighter aviation at Shaw. Assigned to the 20th Ops Group and soon promoted to Staff Sergeant, he became an intelligence technician for the legendary 55th Fighter Squadron. Here, amidst the roar of F-16 CJ afterburners, he became a subject matter expert, translating complex intelligence into actionable information that gave America's fighter pilots the decisive edge. He was not just supporting the mission, he was honing the skills that the nation would soon call upon in a time of international crisis. That call came sooner than expected for Bob and Jess. Now, I want to pause here to just make a huge amount of stress that we sometimes put young military families into. Now, while eagerly awaiting the arrival of Cadence, they were suddenly faced with a truly agonizing choice. Bob could either deploy and miss the birth of Cadence, or stay for the birth and then miss the first 6 months of her life. Right? These are not normal decisions that young American people make. Ultimately, Bob and Jess chose to have Bob miss the birth so that he could come home sooner, right? So he could return and not go back. This is a decision that illustrates, I think, really a mental load, I think, that we put on folks sometimes. However, I'm happy to report that Divine Providence kind of intervened in this situation, plus was really good commander. And in a positive turn of events, and demonstrating the strength of this supportive military community, Bob Squadron worked really hard to get him home early. And this act of compassion allowed Bob to make it just in time to witness Cadence fulfilled, serving as a powerful reminder that while the mission is critical, a compassionate man understands that people matter more. Okay, now back to the story though. Sergeant Ford deployed with the 31st Fighter Squadron to Italy. He was thrust in the middle of this rapidly escalating conflict in direct support of Operation Unified Protector. On the front lines of NATO's air campaign over Libya, his role was pivotal. And as his Air Force Commendation Medal states, it was his tireless analysis and meticulous mission planning that proved indispensable to the coalition. He provided the critical time-sensitive intelligence that directed over 250 combat sorties. His work was not theoretical. It has tangible life and death consequences, guiding coalition air power to neutralize key enemy targets and contribute directly to the success of the mission and the liberation of the Libyan people. He left the theater, forged in the crucible of conflict, a combat-proven leader. When Bob returned home, he made another fateful decision. He applied and attended the Advanced Enlisted Mission Planning course at the U.S. Air Force Weapons School at Nellis Air Force Base, what Bob referred to as academic Hunger Games. His weapons officer, in a moment of spectacular misjudgment, told him, "You'll be fine," right before Bob spectacularly fell on his face during his first check ride by giving him a PowerPoint briefing with lots of enthusiasm. After surviving 18 hours fueled by enough energy drinks to personally fund the entire snack out, he graduated. The crucible of weapons school taught him a standard that he would carry forever. Be humble enough to keep learning, approachable enough to build trust, and credible enough to be relied upon when it mattered most. During his time at Shaw, his status as an intelligence professional was undeniable. His performance, validated in combat and recognized by his leadership, culminated with him being, and I think that this is a big deal, the 55th Fighter Squadron's 2013 NCO year. Bob did amazing things at Shaw, and Shaw is it's a decent place, right? It's not quite Hawaii though. So luckily, the next chapter took him to the strategic crossroads of the Pacific, Joint Base Pearl Harbor. Promoted to technical sergeant, he assumed the vital leadership role of the NCOIC of intelligence training for the 15th Ops Support Squadron. Here, he demonstrated his gift for mentorship, directing a 12-member team and executing a completely new syllabus that certified over 60 air crews for critical survival, evasion, resistance, and escape tactics. His efforts directly enhanced the combat readiness of 3 different weapon systems, so the F-22s that are there, the C-17s, as well as the C-40 Clipper PV aircraft. His own commitment to professional development was on full display as he then graduated from NCO Academy as a distinguished graduate. Yeah.
There goes
Amongst Bob's favorite memories and stories from his time in Hawaii, his idyllic life was only briefly shattered one morning when his phone started screaming out that there was a theater ballistic missile inbound to Hawaii, causing civilians to try to flood the lake. I remember this. This was what that was. The best thing to come from Hawaii, however, was his second child, his second daughter, who Bob lovingly describes as the child my parents wished upon me when I was growing up. As to this day, his parents still apologize to my wife, who apparently just did nothing to deserve this. Okay. Now, it's 2019. Having mastered his craft as a practitioner, Master Sergeant Ford answered the call to become an instructor at Goodfellow Air Force Base. We've got some Goodfellow alums here. It's awesome having you guys here. His impact as the flight chief of the 315 Training Squadron was huge, was monumental. He spearheaded a comprehensive 40-hour curriculum overhaul during that time, a massive undertaking, really modernized the pipeline for the entire route bill. And this was truly amazing stuff. But perhaps more memorable for those of us that were there is like all of this happened at a really kind of tumultuous moment, right? COVID was happening during that time. We had an epic snowstorm and a water contamination disaster that tried to kill us all in February of 2021. There was a lot happening during this time. Among the most memorable stories, though, that Bob shared, and I remember this one, I want to tell you what it's like being an instructor and working with 18-year-old kids sometimes. Apparently, a few young airmen approached the instructors one day. Their faces were a perfect blend of horror and morbid curiosity, as Bob likes to say. They reported a very bizarre spectacle unfolding in the chow hall. According to them, 2 students were aggressively making out while against the rules wasn't unheard of. What was truly baffling, though, is that they were doing this while eating. So pausing their passionate embrace long enough to shove a food into their mouths before reconnecting. All in a misguided effort to save time. Intrigued, and the instructors went to investigate and witness the horror firsthand. In what Bob describes as a moment of instructional professionalism and maturity, they named the grotesque maneuver the baby bird. Am I right, guys? Yes. Bob confirms, and yes, it was exactly as gross as it sounds. This incident perfectly captured the chaos of tech school, where one moment you're shaping the next generation into professionals, and the next you're delivering a dead serious lecture on why chow hall etiquette and basic human decency exists. Okay, this chaotic moment was made infinitely harder by some of the interpersonal dynamics that existed on the staff. He learned a lot during this time. He learned what kind of leader he never wanted to become in some cases. And thankfully, everything changed when he was moved to a different squadron, mostly because he didn't have to work for me anymore. Under new leadership that trusted and empowered him, Bob thrived, building a new course from scratch and even building the squadron as a senior enlisted leader on several occasions. It reinforced his core belief that leadership makes or breaks an organization. You can stifle people or you can empower them, as he says. He was grateful to experience both. One showed him how to endure, and the other one showed him how to lead. Ultimately, though, through his direct leadership and mentorship, he guided his instructor team to graduate an astonishing 986 all-source intelligence analysts, fueling the Air Force's global ISR enterprise with skilled and great airmen. His sustained excellence was recognized twice as he was named the Group Senior NCO of the Corps. Now, his time at Goodfellow, and it was a really special moment, I think, for a lot of us in the room, but this wasn't the end of the story, of course. So Bob then comes here, Kirby. Master Sergeant Ford, here within the 33rd Cyberspace Squadron, is at the forefront of the newest and most complex warfighting domain. As the superintendent of operating location Bravo, he has proven his adaptability, and he leads a very highly specialized team of 24 members of military, civilians, and contractors. The mission is of the utmost importance, executing defensive cyber operations to hunt for and neutralize state-level adversaries, safeguarding AFSOC's $1.2 billion global network. His leadership is so profoundly trusted that he has served as the acting squadron senior enlisted leader on a number of occasions. So as he completes his final lap at Grover, Bob is truly finishing strong, working a unique mission alongside some of the best NCOs of his entire career. And as he shared with me, he is wrapping up his service grateful for the people and the journey, hoping to pass on just one last lesson to airmen that he led, hoping that they will remember to take care of your people, trust your team, and never forget that leadership is less about authority and more about responsibility. So in closing, my friends, thank you for hanging with us here as we chronicle 20 years of selfless service on the part of the Ford family. Anyone who has done this as long as Bob and I have know that what makes these moments so heavy is actually the collective weight of the unspoken memories, the thousands of quiet moments that have no words assigned, the late night worries while a spouse is away, the long distance phone calls, the struggles of watching your kids adapt to new environments, schools, sports teams, and the nagging worry that maybe this next move, this next job, maybe this house wasn't a good decision. Now, for those of us who are lucky, we get to silently navigate all of this with our friends. Bob, as you close this chapter of your life and begin writing the next, you may have many emotions: sadness, pride, anticipation, apprehension. Take some time to reflect on the people, the mission, the places, the events. Know that you have indeed made a difference to thousands of your lives. Know that you did indeed perform your duties well. Know that you've made the United States Air Force better in your more than 20 years of service. In the words of the great Stoic writer and Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, when he has performed some benevolent action or accomplished anything else that contributes to the common good, he has done what he was constituted for and has what is properly his. Bob, you have earned this. On behalf of the men and women of the 33rd Cyber Operations Squadron and the United States Air Force, thank you. Best wishes to just you, the kids, in whatever the future holds. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I'm surprised Postal didn't donate any stories for that. Probably would be here all night. Thank you, Colonel Bergman. Sergeant Ford, please join Colonel Bergman on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the reading of the retirement order of the Armed Forces of the United States of America. Attention to orders. The Department of the Air Force, Washington, D.C., and Special Order number AC-005082. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, you are hereby retired from active duty effective 1 March 2026. Master Sergeant Robert Ford, United States Air Force, retired.
I got you. Thanks. Bush. I don't know.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone that showed up on me here, especially at the back table. Thank you. Thank you. You all, Stephanie's family, it's been a long time. Thank you all. Thank you all for making me out here. I really appreciate it. Miguel, Astoria, DJ, all of you, thank you. It was truly amazing. Colonel Burns, brother, I can't thank you. This was excellent. I really appreciate all the stories, and we were truly awesome with being here, and I really appreciate you here. So thank you for all being here. Whether you came for the ceremony or the open bar and the free food. 20 years ago, I really did not think that I would be standing here. I did those two things. I had no idea this was structured, and I would definitely think my parents could definitely confirm.
Who's that building he's gonna start? Let it go, Bob, let it go. Let it go. Let it flow.
First of all, mom and dad, no dad's not here, but you will have one day, and I don't know if you can sit, but I want to say thank you for putting up the coffee and all
Why quiet so long?
You don't mind it.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking with me long enough for me to figure it out. Join the Air Force.
Oh, next year's hot, Ron.
There was Steve Sprayer, maybe we can keep proud. You should never give up.
Get the next one ready.
You supported me when I hadn't fully earned it, and that very shaped the man standing here today. I hope this retirement is a small return on investment in you. That's the bride.
Want to stop before you do that?
You don't have enough with it that way. To my wife, yes, 16 years. Which, when we're both active duty, public alongside you. You understood the long hours, the last minute task force, the appointments, the TDYs, the stress, the responsibility, because you were living. We both walked through the door exhausted. We both had days where the machine took everything out of us, and somehow we still figured out how to eat everyone, raise kids, move houses, and somehow keep our marriage. That's not just normal, that's thank you for holding down the home front when we make sure that we win. Thank you for letting me be the second we did. Thank you for the founder coordination and alert light measurement operations plan. Thank you for the grace when one of us had to miss something important. And thank you for being here today. I just discussed.
Yeah.
You are the definition of someone who absolutely could have done that. Thank you. I ripped a lot of you down this fall. But truly, I would not be standing here without you. Not because you supported my career from the sidelines, but because we built yours at the same time. You carried rank, responsibility, and pressure of your own, and still showed up for our family. You've been my partner in every sense of the word, in uniform and out of uniform. When I was frustrated, you understood. When I doubted myself, you recalibrated me, and when things got heavy, you didn't push.
Yeah. Got it.
Jess, thank you for putting up with me all these years. Thank you for loving me when I was easy to love, and especially you didn't just share this journey, you matched this step for step. We wore the same uniform, carried different missions, and somehow built a life in between PCS orders and performance reports. We didn't just balance two military careers, we built a marriage and a family. And the greatest proof of that partnership is sit right next to you.
Okay. Jason.
Dance Milano, you've grown up in the second half of this career. You've packed up rooms, said goodbye to friends, started new schools, and adapted more times than most adults ever have to. And you did it with strength and grace. Thank you for being patient with your dad. Thank you for understanding when I had to leave. Thank you for still running the door when I came back. And I promise you this, we're done with it. This is
Yeah.
We've learned stability, work years, and I'm excited to be present with you. All right.
Give me next.
support plan.
Yeah.
Whatever you are. We moved into what felt like a figuratively challenging housing situation. As most of you know. But you all made it worth it. You turned neighbors into our kids' godparents. Call them. Who would have thought one random pickup basketball game would lead to this lifelong friendship? Our stories may differ on who beat who more. We always played well together. And just when I thought you couldn't do any better, you went and married up. And we're blessed to have you in our lives. Thank you all for being here. Father Brian, so in case anyone was not tracking, so obviously the locals that are from Savannah are very familiar with, who was just on speaker for immigration. So landlord illustrations, and you just take whatever. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Alright, almost there. I was told to add this since they're here, so to the foremost in the back of the room. Thank you. A little bit off script here, without trying to get everything down, but oh yeah, Darren, being here.
Of course.
He's
at the floor, bro.
said today is pretty normal for us, right? But for the civilians in the audience, I just kind of want to speak to a few things. In the military, you meet different kinds of people. You have some that are acquaintances. You have some that are friendly. We don't really truly call them friends. And then there's a small group. The one you get titles like brother, sister, and I'm here to just say the family is a we're just getting to town that Uncle Darren is very familiar with. Where a guy told his friend that he needs help, and he said, "The one that listening." And the guy at the station's friend said, "Whose car is it?" That right there is the most important. It's the people who know your worst days and stay anyway. It's the ones who still see you under pressure, under fire, under stress, and still choose to be by your side. It's the bond towards and shared sacrifice, shared mission, and shared responsibility. And most importantly, it's the one who's getting next to you. No question asked. For 20 years, I've been blessed to serve alongside people like that. I didn't do this alone. None of us ever did. The uniform may come off. Our relationships fell apart. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for being here.
That's our court and his family. We'd like you to join us with Christmas. And now, moving forward, we'll play the first song.
All right, now you go socialize. Okay, yeah, I got maybe 30. Yeah, you can.
Michael Chandler. He should.
I think it's